Right, so we're online. That's Eclipse, that's beautiful. Just going to close these up, close all. Right, let's start with a little bit of admin. So I've been a little busy the last few days. Meetings and all kinds of stuff, but that's no excuse. That doesn't interest you either. Bottom line is I haven't looked at my emails the whole of yesterday, and I did receive some email from at least one unhappy student who's unhappy about the practical test. Who else is unhappy about the practical test? Okay, loads of people. What are you going to do about it? You have many options. You can internalize and try to use the anger to motivate you in your revenge campaign. You can send an email to your class representative. You can send a letter to not the head of department, because that's me, but you can send an email to me. You can send an email to the dean, or you can send an email to the rector or the newspapers, or you can have your parents hire a lawyer to sue the university. All kinds. There's many options. Don't feel powerless. At least one person did send me an email saying they're unhappy, and then they sent an email saying they were maybe a little irrational, foul language, and the name calling wasn't called for. And I asked to make an appointment. And I haven't answered them, I should have, but the bottom line is today is out, because wherever you are, because I've got meetings the whole day long. But there's one thing you must do about it. There's one critical thing that you must do about the practical test, and that is to learn from your mistakes. Because if you get an assignment in computer science or at the university in general, you must follow the instructions on the question paper. And I know that you've heard this before maybe, and that students at the last 1,000 years have heard the same sentence, and they didn't pay attention either. But if it says that you must write a program called robot.java, then write a program called big R robot.java and nothing else. And if the program asks that it must output 1, 2, and 3, output 1, 2, and 3. Don't output. My final answer is : 1, 2, and 3. We often mark by machine, and it's not because I don't have time to mark it by hand. I did last year mark it by hand for other various reasons. We marked for style as well, but it's the fairest way. I don't make mistakes. The computer doesn't make mistakes. So if I use the computer, I won't be making mistakes in marking your work. Having said all that, I know it seems cruel that somebody could write a program with just one tiny little error and then they lose their marks. But I can't say that. I can't be that cruel. I can't say that if you're stupid enough to call your program your own name, then you deserve to lose your marks. But that's not what I want to say. I shouldn't say that. That's nasty. Even if it's what I believe deep inside, that's very, very nasty. So that's negative. It's not nasty. It's negative. I don't want to have a negative vibe. So I'm sorry if you misnamed the program or if you decided on your own output format. Let's fix this. Let's make you guys happy, and let's make me happy as well. It's always nice to, when you're like in an abusive relationship, and you beat your wife, and then you guys make up sex. Sometimes that's the best part. Do you know what I'm talking about? You said yes. Okay. So let's have some make-up sex. I've already beaten you. Even though you didn't deserve it, I've beaten you. And let's see how we can fix it. So yesterday, I was at a management meeting, one of a million management meetings. It comes one day after the managers met with their managers in their management meeting, And one of the things we were told is that we must not change the rules. If we change the rules, then we will be sued by unhappy students. And I'm not afraid that you will sue me, but the university, these rules are to protect you guys, so that if in the yearbook it says ABC, then you know ABC is what's going. And it's also to protect me, so that I can say, you're unhappy, but I followed the rules, and you knew what the rules were, and so on. So my superiors will be a little unhappy if I change this assessment story. It kind of needs to stay. I can't just scrap a test or introduce a new test. That won't please you in any case. But what I can do is to change the weighting. I think that we can get away with that. So I want to change the weighting of practical test 1. Now, part of not changing the rules is that even if you all sign the document that says we agree to the rule change, I'm still not allowed to do that. So if you want a test moved, there was a big story about lawyers and newspapers about the whole class agreed to have the test moved from 5:30 to 6 o'clock. And then there was a story in the newspapers that we're still having tests in the evening, it's unsafe, all kinds of stuff. And in actual fact, the whole class did sign a document saying, we want the test to be moved, please move the test. But there was one unhappy student, maybe the marks weren't good, who knows. Bottom line is that we can get into trouble. But let me announce now, due to practical considerations, we'll have to change the weighing of practical test number 1. So it's not going to count 15%. I can't go below 5%. One % means that somebody will go and this says, what the fuck is this? They've got like this course and one of the practical tests counts 1%. That's insane. So that's like a flag. I'm sure the university has programs that will alert them that I'm doing something sneaky. So I'm going to make this down to 5%. Now we have 10% roaming around. I'm not going to give it to you. You have to earn it. Are you trying to be a naughty wife? You have to earn it. What do you want? Give it to the written test. No, I can't give it to the previous written test because people who did poorly on the previous written test will have had it. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm going to do. I cannot give it. I cannot give it to the project because flexible assessment, there are rules for what's the maximum weight any one assessment can carry, and it can't be more than one quarter. It can't be more than 25. So the project is at the max, but I'm going to up this second practical test by 5%. Okay? So that if you did poorly because you are struggling with the work, you may do poorly in the second practical test as well. But that won't affect your mark. In the sense of, let's say you scored 1 out of 10 for both. 1 out of 10 at 15% plus 1 out of 10 at 15% is 1 out of 10. You understand what I'm saying? And 1 out of 10 at 5% and 1 out of 10 at 20% is still 1 out of 10. So if you're struggling with the work, it won't affect you. If you did poorly in the first practical test because you didn't follow the rules exactly, but your program did kind of work, that means that you'll score better now because you can do the work and you follow the rules in the second practical test. God forbid you're really good at computer science, but you can't follow rules, and then you're kind of screwed. But then you'll do good in the second practical test and you'll get more marks because it's now weighing more. And the only people who are negatively affected is people who did really well in the first test, follow the rules, and they can program as well. And they now got 15%, 100% at 15%. And if anything happens in the second practical test and they fall ill or they just don't click with the problem, they run a risk of getting a lower mark at 20% than they would have at 15%. This is boring you. I can see it in your faces. So I'm going to put 5% to this practical test, and then I'm going to put 5% to the examination, because that is something we all have to write. Once again, in the yearbook, you can check, there is a rule that says every course must make use of the examination opportunity. So I can't not give an exam, even though I want to. The university's insane rules say that if there's an examination, I must make use of it. So you must write it. So I'm going to put that. Yes. It's a written. The exam is like a fourth written test, and the only difference is that it's compulsory. It's not optional like. I mean, one of them is optional. It can be like one previously written test. And in the exam, I'm not going to ask the questions that were on the written tests, but the work it covers will be almost exactly the same as the third written test. So it's as if you're writing the third written test again, in some sense. It won't be much longer at all, and it won't be more difficult. Okay. Is there anything unclear about what I said? Yes, there is something unclear. Thank you. Hang on, give me a second. So I just wanted to recap. I'm going to up the exam to 20. I'm going to up the next practical test to 20. And I'm going to take the first practical test down to 5. Yes. I'm great. No, I'm not great. I am great, but I'm happy. So that's what I wanted to say. Yes.
It's not like directly what you just said now, but you said yesterday that we have to ignore the university's stipulated test dates.
Oh, okay, true. Yes, don't ignore anything about the university. It's a trap. Yes, the official dates. These dates that are these 2 dates for 2 written tests during the course. The university they don't mind if we ignore those dates. Please don't ask me why. I don't know how it works, why it's so insane. But these tests are during the semester. It was supposed to be on Saturday and at the start of March, the first assessment. But we are allowed to reschedule them. So we rescheduled them so that they take place on Thursdays during the TATs. So that you may ignore. But the examination, you must not ignore. Assessment. So, important dates. The examination will be on the 23rd of May at 2 o'clock, and it's probably already on the web, the room in which they've allocated this. But this is like an official university examination. It won't be an exam. It's not an exam. It's not something you have to swap up for and make a big deal about. It's like another written test. It will be open book. You can bring your books. You can bring calculators and books. You can't bring a laptop and cell phone. No cell phone. Just say it. Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? So exam is definitely fixed, but the other written tests please ignore. Anything else you want me to say or clarify? Everybody's still happy? You guys don't look happy. You're looking happier now. You're looking smiley. You're looking decidedly unsmiley. What's wrong? I have to find you. What's your name? You've got very nice hair. What's your name? What's your name? Yes. Here. Oh, here. Nadia. Who's behind you? Say your name? Yes. You're sitting behind Nadia, aren't you? Okay, what's your name? Oh, Noah. Oh, Noah. So Noah, you're very beautiful, but I'm actually referring to Noah. But actually, I want to know who sits behind you, Noah. Ricardo. Hello. Michaela. I'm a little bit. Okay, Michaela, who sits next to you? Therese. Oh, Therese. Oh, because Therese is like a mole. Okay, Clarice, you just want smiling. I just want to make sure that you're really happy. You look really unhappy. You look like you're going straight to the dean or the rector and having me fired. I wonder what would happen if I were fired. Would I get a job? You don't know my skill set. I've got an amazing backhand. I could have been a professional tennis player 50 kgs ago. Okay, right. Are we still on YouTube? Excellent. YouTube is happy. I think that's about all I wanted to say. So everybody's cool with the fact. It's not asking really. I've announced that I'm going to do it. I'll downweigh the practical test and upweigh the next one and the exam. I'll make those changes to the website. Now I'm going to switch on the house lights, as they're called, so that this flickering will stop. So I've just about had it.
Yeah. Just made it work.
No, I think it's better. That's fine. Now, listen, how is the project coming along? Because we've got 3 weeks until the demo. Let me just... Oh, I saw some flickering. It's not away. Let's just talk about this for a second. When you're done with the project, you zip up all the files, but not your class files. Because why would you send those? I want to look at your Java files, and I can compile Java myself, as it happens. So you zip up your Java files, because we definitely need those. Plus, you also you include any images you're using, background music, any kind of tables that you use, that kind of stuff. Not that kind of stuff, exactly that stuff. And then you submit that zip file on SunLearn. Submission will open 9 May. So Monday, the 9th of May, you'll be able to start submitting. And it'll close on the Thursday, the 5th. The 12th of May, my mistake. Stupid, stupid, stupid. How can I make these mistakes? I'm so careful. Okay, so we'll close 12th May, okay, at 12 o'clock. So that's before the demonstration starts. Why can't you submit later than this? Because it's unfair that if your examination is scheduled later in the day, that you have longer to work on your project. Everybody must hand in at the same time, so it's fair to everyone. People do complain about that. When the submission opens, I'd suggest you submit immediately, so that if anything goes wrong, you are hit by a bus on your way to the demo, or your computer eats your hard disk and you lose all your work, or there's a magnetic storm, or you have to take your pet ferret to hospital, then we have something that to fall back on. There is physically no time for excuses, because that's the end of the project. I'm not allowed to assess you, apart from an exam, after the end of classes. I can't mark projects, or I can mark them, but I can't take in projects or TATs or give tutorial tests or anything after the classes end. The only thing that's allowed after classes end, the only assessment, is the exam. That's a rule. Now, so you submit early, so in case anything happens. And before you submit, you test the zip file to see that if I were Yaku and I just downloaded the zip file, can I unzip it successfully in the new directory? Can I compile it in that new directory? Does it work in the new directory? I know you want to show me the very spiffy thing you did in Watch Me library. And if you do that, you'll have to include that library. I don't have the Watch Me library lying around, as it happens. During the demo, your program will have to work from the command line. So you're not allowed to install your own latest pre-release version of NetBeans on the Demi's, or not Demi, the marker's computer, and run it from there. It must work from the command line. And the demos, we'll schedule that on the Monday in class. It's all in RGD. There will be many stations and many different markers. They all follow the same routine. And we'll get to that in a second. You must be outside the lab. So in front of that building or on the side there, sitting on one of the cement benches, 10 minutes before your demo time. Don't be late. There's a place on the form where the demi puts a tick, the marker, not the demi. The marker puts a tick if you're late. There's a -5, I can't recall the marks, but there's a penalty if you're late. Even if you show up, if you're late, you must not come inside the lab when you arrive. You must stay outside. Because otherwise, there are a lot of nervous people sitting there being marked, and then in front, there's a line of students chatting loudly. And it's upsetting to everybody, but especially to me. So 1 minute before your time, you come inside, but we'll synchronize our watches on the Monday in class. So we all have exactly the same time on our watches. And then 1 minute before your time, you come inside, and maybe your marker is free already, or maybe you have to wait a minute or two. You won't be marked as late if you have to wait. Right, what happens in a demo? 6 steps. First, we download your project from SunLearn, so it must be on the system. Don't bring it on a USB stick. Don't bring it on a floppy disk. Don't bring it on your hard. Don't bring your laptop. And say, can you please download it from the laptop? It must be on SunLearn, otherwise it doesn't count at all. The marker will ask you, he'll probably do it herself, himself, unzip it and compile it from the command line, so it must compile. They will run the test, some tests in text mode to check that you've implemented all the functionality. The whole idea of text mode is that if we only have graphical mode, and there's one little thingamajig you didn't implement, but the marker happens not to get to that thing. There's not enough time to check every single thing in the graphical, in the GUI, graphical user interface. Then you get those marks for free, because we can't say you didn't do it. So to check thoroughly that you've implemented all the functionality you must, all the requirements, all these different requirements up here. Where are they? There we go. There is the text mode, and we test in text mode if you satisfy all the requirements. So each of those requirements has at least one test that checks, can your program do what this requirement asks it to do? Okay, so that's marked for text mode. Then you get marked for the graphics. Does your program, your game display correctly? Does it behave correctly in graphical mode? It doesn't have to be spiffy. It doesn't have to have music. It doesn't have to have animation at all. But there must be something in graphics mode that satisfies at least the requirements. Okay, that's 2 done. 2 more to go. Number 5. Sorry. The marker will open your text files, your Java files, and look at the code. And it must be neat and satisfy the coding conventions. So if you write untidy code, you lose marks. If you don't indent, you lose marks. If you use funny variable names, you lose. Let me say that positively. If you indent nice and properly, and your code is commented nicely, and use nice variable names, and it's readable, because we write code for humans, not for computers, then you get a lot of marks, loads of marks. Okay, and the last component is maybe the code works perfectly and the graphical user interface is stunning and beautiful, and the code is absolutely perfect. Let's pretend that the only issue is that you didn't do anything. You stole the whole project by, let's be gracious and say, you conked someone on the head and stole their USB stick. So to test that it's your code, that you understand what's going on, the marker will ask you to change something. So change the keys used to move the player around, or change the color of what you mean. That's difficult because they won't ask color this year, because it's maybe images. But then maybe they'll say, make it so that up movers don't move at all. They always stay stationary. Or make it so that if you find that you simply die if you pick up a key. It doesn't make sense in the game, but you can make that change, and it will tell us if it's really your code. They may not ask you to change anything at all. They may ask you to look through your code and say, okay, please explain this routine to me. It looks quite complicated, and I want to understand what's going on. I promise you, this is a foolproof way to find out who copied code from other people. Let's say that Noah and Nicole, Nicola, actually collaborated and wrote the code together, which is a really bad thing and they mustn't do that. But they can fool us. If they can explain the code perfectly, but we won't know, at least not from this test, that Nicola and Noah copied. But that's fine by me. They both deserve remarks, it's fine, because if they understand the code that thoroughly enough to fool us, then I'm happy. If you collaborate with someone, I promise you, you won't understand the code properly. And as it happens, then you will find that one part that your partner wrote that you don't understand, and you lose those marks. You mustn't just lose marks. You should be reported for plagiarism. The university has a very strict plagiarism policy. Oh, I can't tell you how much bureaucracy there is at the university, but it's a big amount, I promise you. And even if you're found innocent, it's still reported and it goes in your record. And that's good, because the university we shouldn't tolerate plagiarism. In any case, you wanted to ask or say something.
I wanted to ask about the coding convention.
The coding conventions are online, but I bet you they suffer from the same problem that I... Damn it, I don't know why it's... I'll fix it. So it's not a lot. I could put lots of examples, but I don't want to, because I don't want to force people into a coding style. When you program a lot, as you've probably done already, you know that you develop your own coding style. And I don't want any fights breaking out during the demo, like people who say that Braysher should go on the previous line or they should go on a new line by themselves. People do fight about that kind of thing. The bottom line is that you must be consistent. So if the marker looks at your code and see, in one routine, Yaku used no spaces and the braces are always on the same line, that's fine. That's his coding style, and he's a little weirdo, but that's fine. But if the next routine is formatted entirely differently, that's a sign of either plagiarism or some kind of split personality disorder, which should be reported to the correct medical authorities. So you must be consistent, and I don't want to prescribe a style. You see loads of my code, which arguably is probably the best code. Wow. And I'm very proud of my code. I've honed my style over years and years. So be consistent. Pick your rules, but apply them consistently. Indent. You must indent. I cannot believe that there are still people who don't indent. I do not understand how they're like people who don't ever stop at stop streets. They just drive on the road, it's my road, I can drive, I can do what I want. Screw the other people. No, I mean, indentation, it's like, I don't know what it's like. It's like peeing in a toilet. I mean, when you go to a public bathroom, you don't just spray things around all over the place. There are conventions, and you have to consider other people are going to read your code. So please indent properly. Indent. There are programs that indent for you. Eclipse will indent for you. Some people are too lazy to press Control Shift F. Okay. Sensible variable names. Not everything has to have a very long explanatory name. And in this course, we've only written small programs. And in a small piece of code, it's fine to stick to a one-letter name. It's not necessary if you have only one variable in your whole program that calculates the sum from 1 to n, to call that n variable the number up to which I have to calculate the sum. Okay? That is not sensible. It's unreadable. People don't want to read that much, that many letters. So one-letter names are fine sometimes. The only place where it's really not fine is in parameters. If we are giving names to parameters, the next programmer comes along and they look at the signature of the method, the static method, and they say, oh, this is static method draw ball. And it takes two parameters, A and B. What is A and B in terms of draw ball? So in that situation, it's much better to call those parameters X position and Y position. It tells whoever is going to call this routine, including you yourself, what the parameters are for and what they're doing. Yes?
Can we not just comment?
You can comment, but why comment when you can just call a parameter, give it a sensible name, and people can understand it? And of course, it relies on your definition of sensibility. But if you're writing code that we know 1,000 other people will use and read, then it's sensible to institute. In a big company, they have a company policy on coding conventions. So in this company, we always name variables in the following way. We always write code to look a certain way. We absolutely always write comments before each static method that explains the purpose of each parameter. And that makes a lot of sense in a big project. But in our little project, it's fine to just choose sensible names, if it's not ambiguous. And this is relying on you to know when things are ambiguous or when it can be misinterpreted, but okay. Lastly, comments. It's not a good idea to comment every single thing you do. Comments are there to help the reader. It's like writing a nice poem. Who wrote poems at school? Are you asked to write poems? No one has ever written a poem. I find it impossible to believe. Okay, you at least wrote essays at school. Okay, do you still do orals? Okay, right. French. Orals in French. Food. En école. Oh, très bien. What do you want? I have to practice my French because I'm meeting with people from Frenchland today. Big university in France wants to give us money. I always say yes. Oh, please. Okie dokie. So, comments. We're wasting time. So, I'm not going to remind you daily of the project, and you're not going to hear anything from me about the project again, in the sense of telling you what you must do. There are about 3.5 weeks to go, 3 weeks, and you should already have started. You should already have some code. But today, I actually want to go one step back. So, why don't we use our ideas about modules and modularity and structured programming to, too late now, but to design our project a little. So you should ideally design the project before you start coding it, but many people don't. They almost design after the fact when they have to write a document to describe the design. In real companies, it works like that. They just hack the code, and then they go and say, oh, what did we do? That's bad. You should plan beforehand. And I hope you've already started writing some code, but let's just think about what kind of code, what kind of module structure we want. We have to write our game, and it's called traversal. So I'm going to have a module. I'll definitely have a module called traversal. There should be a module like that. A class file that contains some of the logic of the game. But it doesn't need to contain all the code. We can break it up in parts, especially since our game needs to operate in two very different modes. One is graphical, and one is entirely text-based. So it makes sense to put all the graphical stuff in one class, or at least one class. and to put all the text-based stuff in a different class. So this is not a real name. I'm just making it up, but I'm going to call it today. I'm going to call it TUI for textual user interface. Now that I think about it, why is that? No one ever used this word. It's beautiful. So there's GUI and TUI. GUI is the graphical, TUI is the textual. They're different because they behave in different ways. So we know that TUI, in the textual version, we get two files, two file names, one for the board and one for the commands. In the graphical version, we only get one file name, and that's only for the board, and then we read the commands from the keyboard. But those commands are given, or those file names are given on the command line, so it's really traversal that we receive those file names. And it'll have to pass them to GUI and to TUI. So if there's two of them, it's going to activate TUI. So it'll probably call a routine like play game. And it'll parse, it'll give the board file and the command file. And it'll probably pass, I don't want to write this on here. I have a different colored pen. My marking pen. Okay, right. When it calls it, it'll actually pass args 0 and args 1. Remember, that's called the formal parameters, and that's called the actual parameters. Okay. Right. So you'll call that routine. So TUI needs to implement that routine, and GUI will probably implement a routine that may also be called play game, but it only takes one argument, the board file. That's probably all that traversal has to do. All its main has to do is to check one command arguments or two, and call either TUI.playGame or GUI.playGame, and pass the command line arguments. Okay. What about GUI and TUI? I'm not going to write two copies of the game. I don't want to duplicate my work. So that they do actually have a lot of stuff in common. I mean, all the rules of the game is the same. The rules stay the same, it's just that how those rules are accessed differ from GUI and TUI. So I could extract a common core of the rules, the actual game itself, without thinking about the interface. So I could write another module called, what do I call it? The most difficult part of computer science is thinking of sensible names. I don't want to just call it game. I'll call it T-game. No, I'll call it Trav game. Traver game. That's what I'll call it. No, that's a stupid name. No one will know what it means. I'll call it game. Okay. Right. So game is a class that will contain all the shared functionality between the graphical user interface and the textual user interface. So all the rules, and it will store the board. GUI won't store the board. It will simply ask the game, what is the board, and then draw it. And TUI won't store the board either. It will ask the game module, what's on the board, and it will print it out to the console. So the game is the one that stores the board, and the game is the one that will update the board when something changes. So what can change? Well, they're both reading a board file, so they need some way to set up the board. I'm not sure about the parameters. I'm only planning this in the way you should think about this stuff. But definitely they'll set up the board. And TUI will do the same. And from now on, I'm only going to write GUI because, well, I'll get to TUI later. What else must GUI do? So it sets up the board, then it reads a key from the keyboard, and that corresponds to move. So it will probably be issuing commands to game like move up, move down, and left and right. These are all routines that GUI can call in game. So let's see, it sets up the board, reads keys, it calls the method in game that moves the player around. But how does it know when the player has died or has reached the target? I mean, somehow game must tell it. So there are two options. As always, there are many ways of doing things. In this case, there are two sensible options. One is to have a routine that GUI can call. In fact, we can have two routines. One called isDead. That'll send back a Boolean. So GUI will read a key, make a move, and check if isDead is true or not. Or it should also check isDone. Have we reached the target? That's one way of doing things. That's one alternative. So this is one way we can design game. That's option one. But a second option is to say that whenever GUI makes a move, the routine will send back a signal to say whether the player is dead or done or still playing. And since there are three return values, dead, done, or still going, it's called active, we can't send back a Boolean. It'll have to be an int. So all these routines, they'll be something like int move down, and then okay. So when GUI calls one of those routines after the key has been pressed, it can check. Should I stop now because move down sent back a 1 or a 2, or do I carry on because it sent back a 0? So these are design choices. We now have to think about the pros and the cons. What will be easier to implement? Will it be okay with 2E if it works this way? What will my code look like? Will the code be neater when I'm using isDead and isDone? I mean, I'm imagining the play game will be something like this. Oh, that here's the board file, and it'll be something like this. It'll do a setup, who knows what. Then it'll say while not isDead, I'm giving away code, and not game.isDone, read key, make move. Not very clear in any case. But that can be all that playground does. It's a little routine, piece like that. That looks nice. What will the code look like if I choose the second design option? What are the pros and cons? What do I like best? So when we design, we get to these kinds of design decisions. And we have to think a little bit, choose one. I mean, that's part of design. If I left this until later, I would maybe be confused about which way to do things. Maybe I'll confuse these two options and try to do both or something else. Or I may write the GUI now and it'll work in a certain way. And then later, close to the deadline, I try to write game and it works in a different way and everybody's unhappy. Okay, and the last thing that GUI will do is it needs to draw the board. Oh, so in here it should be also draw board. So from time to time, after every move, the GUI should refresh the board on the screen. How does it know what to draw? It'll have to ask game. It'll have to call a routine like get the board contents at square X and Y. So that it has two for loops and it works out all the rows, all the columns. Each time it gets whatever is on that square on the board and it draws it on the screen. Or maybe it'll work a little different way. I mean, maybe game will send back the whole board as one big array or two-dimensional array, which is not ideal. I like this better, but I wouldn't I? Okay. And TUI does almost the same kind of thing.
So,
I have to stop. Yes.
could you explain why not use arrays?
Oh, because passing arrays around is considered bad form in coding. So, I mean, if every routine passes all the arrays in the whole game to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy, it's passing it all around all the time. That's inefficient, and it's kind of sign that there's a weakness in your game. This is considered much, much better. Just get one piece of information out. Guys, just hold on. You just hold on too. Yes. Follow up.
The board twice and then GUI by sending it.
GUI needs to draw the board graphically on the screen, and in that part, then it will repeat it like only using that technique. If we're in the TUI mode, then it also needs to get something support output at the end of the command file of all commands that you process. So in that case, it only draws it once right at the end. But it can still work with the same grain class. Okay. I'm going to stop. I will say more on Friday if you want me to, but we should start the last concept we're going to learn in this course, which is a big one. It's called recursion. And its definition is it's recursive. Yes, what is it? Ask.
About projects. Something which was basically up and down movers.
Up and down movers.
They are identical. Something about
Up and down movers are identical.
yeah.
Did I make a mistake? These are the, oh man, down movers. This arrow should be pointing down. I'm so sorry. Thank God you caught that. So these arrows should be pointing down because these are down movers. Like the left movers, the little arrow in the middle points left. And the little arrow points right. You have to go to your next class. Maybe I'll pick this up on Friday for 10 minutes.